Well, hello there. What the hell is up, everybody? And welcome back to Elden Ring. And now, as you can tell from the title, today we will see if I can masquerade as an ancient dragon cultist and conquer the lands between using the powers of lightning. It's the same character as I've been using in my previous Elden Ring videos, and today we'll be taking on New Game Plus 3. So, pull up a chair, sit back and relax, because you're going to see some pretty cool shit today, okay? Now, before anything, I obviously had the respec out of my last build. The last run was pretty enjoyable, but I thought this one would be a little more difficult this time. Now, as for my talismans, I opted for the pretty standard Shard of Alexander and Dragoncrest Great Shield talisman that I've been rocking with for a while, and the other two slots were rotated out depending on what my needs were. I started out with the Godfrey and Radagon icons, and for my weapon of choice, it was so obvious. I mean, the Bolt of Grandsax or nothing. It's the only thing that made sense in terms of meaning, looks, and application. And as for the incantations that I used, it goes without saying that I limited myself to the Dragon Cult incantations, with Golden Vow, of course. But mainly for the entire run, I was using Lightning Spear, Hone Bolt, Fortisax's Lightning Spear, and Ancient Dragon's Lightning Strike. And of course, I was absolutely spamming the Ash of War of the Bolt of Grandsax. Now, as we get into journey number 4 with Testudines, let me outline what the point of this video is and what the point of all the other iterations of the Can I Beat Elden Ring using insert build here videos that I've been putting out. So for those of you who are seeing one of my videos for the first time, or maybe just recently discovered me, Elden Ring is my first and only FromSoft game that I've ever played. So I'm still a newbie when it comes to all of this. I'm not a speedrunner, I'm not a no-hit run go-getter, and I'm definitely not one of those top-tier gamers that try to make games infinitely harder by placing ludicrous restrictions on myself. I'm not saying those guys are doing anything bad, and like I'm not jealous of them or anything. Actually, I am jealous because they are so much better at the game than I am. I actually love all those videos. All that I'm saying is, if I ever try to do some kind of crazy challenge run like what those guys do, you'd probably never see the video because there is no way in hell that I could ever beat the game that way. It's just not possible. The reason why I title my videos the way that I do is basically just a game of semantics. With every build idea that I come up with, I want to see what I can accomplish as an average gamer. At the end of the day, these videos are essentially just me trying to learn how to use all that the game has to offer to the player. And doing theme builds gives me an opportunity to learn more about how all this shit really works. I know tons of people out there could easily beat the game with the weapons and incantations that I'm using, but if you've been around my channel from the start, you know that some of us gamers are a bit more mechanically challenged than others. Oh yeah, and I probably should have mentioned this earlier. Okay, don't be mad, but I will not be beating all Remembrance bosses in this run. Mainly because I've been having problems with Godfrey, so I really wanted to focus on learning his stuff. And every single time I've beaten Malenia, it's been with the help of Spirit Ashes, and I wanted to do it by myself. So without further ado, let's get into it. Man, oh man. I don't care what the replayability of this game is like for you. This view never gets old for me. The build may change, but the pre-boss buffs, they shall remain the same. Now, unfortunately for me, this fight against Morgott was in no way indicative of how the entire run would go. The opening sequence saw me take out half of his friggin' health, and honestly, I could have done a lot more if I just charged my Ash of War. I mean, come on now, look at how much damage that this does when it's fully charged. It's ridiculous. It's not fair. I saw a gap open up that allowed me to get off a quick lightning spear, and I finished him off with a quick little jabby jab at the end. All in all, the fight took me about 45 seconds to finish, which is about the same time it takes me to finish when Godric was so pathetic that it almost wasn't even worth showing in this video, which is very sad considering my videos are not exactly a very high quality anyway. But this is the fight that I discovered where this build really shines. Against slow and passive enemies, you can just snipe them from a mile away with all the incantations and the Ash of War. Once Godric phase transitioned, I fully expected to just nuke his health bar with Ancient Dragon's Lightning Strike, but I discovered that I just did not know how the incantation really worked. Now, the end of the fight was kind of slapstick and sloppy, mostly because whenever I film these runs, it's usually after taking like a multiple month break from the game. I could have probably just hit Baby Huey over the head a couple times with, you know, some Ashes of War and called it a day, but where's the fun in that? I want to watch this pathetic excuse of a man suffer from my hand. Before we move on, I did a bunch of random shit like grabbing the first Dectus medallion, doing my best Humpty Dumpty impression by falling off a wall and fucking dying, carrying on the channel tradition of committing mass genocide on the vulgar militiamen. And finally, I grabbed the better half of the Dectus medallion. I'm right-handed, so of course I'm gonna like the right side more than the left. Now, before the Rennala fight, I found out what the dog was doing, and it turns out he was battling a case of rabies, so I had to terminate his bitch ass.
Enemy spotted.
I never thought I'd see the day where an NPC would give me more trouble than the actual bosses, but that's Moongrum for you, I guess, nowadays. Now, Phase 1 of Rennala is still an absolute joke unless you're playing with a blindfold on a cold, rainy night because you have no friends, no social life, and have no idea how to talk to women. Damn, did I just describe myself? I couldn't one-cycle her because I'm an idiot, but I realized the second time around that a fully charged Ash of War might make a difference. Now, at this point in the run, my brain still couldn't comprehend the fact that Ancient Dragon's Lightning Strike just is not like a huge AoE that just explodes around you, so I missed an easy opportunity for damage right at the start. After that, Rennala and I were just spamming back and forth. Well, she was doing the spamming and I was actually running for my life, but you get the idea. Now, I was just doing my best to use all of my different incantations against her for no other reason other than the fact that I just wanted to win in style. The only issue is, to be able to think in such a matter, you must be good at the game. And I unfortunately am not. Eventually, I was able to atone for my mistakes and remind Rennala of why Radagon deserted her bitch ass in order to literally marry himself. I can't think of anything more disrespectful to do to a woman. When I got into the fight with Radahn, I tried doing a little something that I saw Gino do a bunch of times in his no-hit runs, but my brain can't handle simple tasks. I mean, I kinda got the strategy half right, because after that, he just started shooting his arrows off into the void like a senile Joe Rogan. I started off the fight with a fully charged Ash of War just to dip my toes into the water a little bit and see how much damage I could do. Dick poke. During this fight, I discovered that Ancient Dragon's Lightning Strike just did not work very well with me because I had not a fucking clue how to use it. The Ancient Lightning Spear, on the other hand, seemed like my best bet in terms of just actual raw damage. It felt weird not having a melee-centric build for Radahn. One of my toxic traits is that I am stubborn as hell and I would rather fail doing something my way instead of trying a different approach, so that explains why I continue to use Ancient Dragon's Lightning Strike, even though I just couldn't seem to get it to friggin' work. After General Radahn got finished crashing into the second tower... okay, maybe I actually shouldn't make a joke like that. That's a little fucked up. Never mind. I'll keep it in. What's the worst that could happen? YouTube giving me a strike on my channel? They've got more important things to worry about. Or do they? Back end of the fight was sloppier than a Mama June mukbang, and honestly, a Mama June mukbang just gave me the worst visual that I have ever imagined in my life, so we're just gonna act like that phrase was never uttered from my mouth, because now I feel like I'm about to throw up everywhere. I even feel sick to my stomach right now. But what makes me feel better is the fact that Radahn is now dead. After that, I wished on a shooting star, and unfortunately, I didn't seem to get what I wished for because I did not in fact wake up with an egregiously massive Alaskan bullworm schlong between my legs, but we can't always get what we want, I guess. The Ricky Bobby Sentinel actually went pretty well considering I imagine he has a lightning resistance. I mean, granted it also helps that New Game Plus damage scaling hasn't really caught up to me yet, so for the meantime, I'm just doing stupid damage to people while they're not really doing that much back to me. Look at this dude. Trying so hard to attack me with those lightning strikes. Who does he think I am? Some kind of amateur? Sometimes my timing was a little off, but it can't possibly be any worse timing than opening up a retirement account right before getting diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, because that would suck. I decided to finally put the Draconic Tree Sentinel out of his misery, but he held on with like 1 HP for some reason. For someone who's literally destined to die at my hand, he's got a lot of balls trying to stay in this fight. After I made it into the capital, I paid my respects to my lord and savior, Granddaddy Sax. And then I went to take on Golden Godfrey. I figured this would be easy considering the Godfrey shade is weak to lightning damage, so I just marched my happy ass in there, charged up an ancient lightning spear, and my god, it did a lot of damage. If an uncharged lightning spear is doing that much, that's a sign you may be a little bit too powerful for New Game Plus 3. Now, I was right about this fight being easy. When I wasn't at a distance, I was all up in Godfrey's grill giving him the old stick and poke treatment. It didn't really matter if I traded damage because I knew I wouldn't really take that much anyway. This fight is how I imagine my older brother felt wrestling against me when we were younger. I'm out here throwing marshmallow punches, and this dude would just fuck me up in like 4 hits. It wasn't even fair. Next up is Margaret Thatcher, and I'm gonna tell you guys right now, if I fought this same way New Game Plus 5 or higher, I definitely would have gotten destroyed, man. The last couple times I fought against Morgott, I pretty much got carried by my level, and not really so much by my skill level. Now, there's a couple of his attacks that I don't really have a problem with dodging at this point, but I'm still prone to getting fucked up by a couple of his combos. And yeah, you just saw me take out like 1/5 of his health bar with a single Ash of War. Now, his phase transition is obviously the easiest thing in the world to punish if you have any opportunity from a distance. One thing I started to realize at this point was that I was rarely ever engaging my opponents up close. And that's just because I'm not a fan of the spear moveset in Elden Ring in terms of melee. They're just kind of boring in my opinion. Then again, I'm also one of those crackheads that spent the majority of his time in the beginning using some type of spellblade build with katanas, so my preferred playstyle is equivalent to an iPad kid's. If it can't trigger Millicent's prosthesis and Rotten Wing sword insignia, I don't want it. In the end, we beat Morgott with a little bit of flair, and I think this might be my favorite weapon art in the game at this point. After relieving Morgott of his kingly duties, I decided to do things a bit differently. I decided to fight against Niall first instead of going to the fire giant. Now, the Niall fight was very odd for the simple fact that it went so smoothly. Now, watching back the beginning of the fight made me think that I probably should go see an eye doctor soon, because I don't know why I thought Ancient Dragon's Lightning Strike would be the move here, but at least it did some damage to Niall. I got some separation from Niall and the other Banished Knight, so I was able to take out the second Spirit Ash. Now, it was on like Donkey Kong. I think Niall spent a little bit too much time locked away from civilization in this castle, because man's starting to lose his marbles a little bit. Dude just swinging his pole around at nothing in particular. Two things to note here. One, I don't know how the hell that lightning didn't register Niall's hurt box. And two, I really think Niall might be a boss that I definitely have conquered, dare say mastered at this point. Once you eliminate his spirit lackeys, he is like so predictable and easy. I guess one thing I have to say is that this boss is always going to be fairly simple if you have ways to counter him from range. But even if you have a melee focused build, I mean, there's only like a couple of attacks do you even really have to worry about. Now take this clip here for example. The easiest attack to punish is when he leaps like a salmon into the air. You just have to make sure you don't get caught by his little backhanded spear attack right there. I mean, after that, this battle is pretty much just rinse and repeat. I just baited out some of those attacks, watched Niall get caught in the Matrix for a second there, and then I found little windows to get some damage off while Niall was beginning an attack animation. I think even Stevie Wonder could see how this battle was going to turn out, so I'll just cut to the chase for all of you so you can get back to watching the NBA playoffs or following NFL free agency. Actually, I mean, who am I kidding? This is an Elden Ring video, so there's a good chance that some of you people haven't touched grass in a year or two. No disrespect intended. It's just a joke. Please laugh. My self-esteem depends on it. After I tricked a senile, crippled man into giving me his family heirloom, I went back to the mountaintops of the Giants where I witnessed nature at its most fierce. Pound for pound, the troll had a lot more power and was doing a lot more damage. I mean, this dude was packing dynamite in his fist, but Birdman had the aerial advantage and came crashing down from the top rope. While this fight was entertaining to watch at first, after a while it was like watching a 90-year-old couple attempt to have sex for the first time in 40 years. I'd be waiting there forever for them to finish. Man, I don't even know if I want to fight the fire giant. He's just up there minding his own business. I mean, come on, look at how peaceful he is. Maybe he's just a gentle, misunderstood giant. My independent fact checkers have determined that that statement was a fucking lie. This time against the fire giant, I had to get a little creative due to the fact that my best damage potential came from incantations and distance, not up close and personal melee attacks. It felt weird, but then again, once I ran up on his feet, it was just yeah. And I finally got to use Ancient Dragon's Lightning Strike at its full potential. It's about damn time. In terms of dodging, sometimes I had no dodging. But that's okay, because whenever I got close to the fire giant, I would summon Death from above and take out a decent chunk of his health. I tried to get some thrust in with the spear, but I might as well have been using a toothpick, so I just decided to keep using my Ash of War. Another trick I learned in my time watching various no-hit runs is that when the fire giant initially goes cripple mode and ejaculates his fireballs everywhere, all that you have to do is just run straight back and just chill there for a couple seconds. Gives you time to rebuff if needed. I, however, did not need to apply my buffs again because I am simply the one true alpha male that women want to be with and that women want to be. Maybe some men even want to be with me. That might be gay, but at the end of the day, a win is a win. Keeps the females humble, you know what I'm saying? If they ever screw up, I got options. I finished off the fight in style with the incantation that has been giving me the most trouble, ironically enough. 3 casts of Ancient Dragon's Lightning Strike were enough to put the nail in this big, beefy boy's coffin. Next up on my hit list was the Godskin Duo, and if you haven't seen my last couple videos, I've gotten these guys on my first try in at least one of those runs. Maybe like less than 5 in the moon build, I don't remember, that was a few months ago. Yeah, anyway, this time around was not so simple. I had no clue how I was going to do this because I didn't know the casting times of my Ash of War and incantations and, like, well, how they would affect the damage window opportunities, I guess, if that makes sense. So my most valuable and viable ways to get damage were obviously ranged, but the problem with both members of the Godskin Duo is that they close distance very easily. I realized that this fight would either involve a lot of running and then waiting for one opportunity to get a hit in, like every 17 years, or I'd just have to suck it up and use the bolt of Grand Saxon melee like a man. And honestly, I'd rather suck on somebody's toes than do that. I don't know if you've ever tried to do a playthrough with a spear, but after doing pretty much an entire playthrough with one, I can safely say I do not despise anything more than the spear moveset in this game. I'd actually rather do dual daggers any day of the week over this shit. The first attempt ended, not good. Same thing on the second, but I eventually got my shit together after a few more tries. Now, I found out that Lightning Spear and Home Bolt were really the only viable incantations because of their quicker cast time, and if you chain together the Home Bolt cast, it actually gets some pretty decent DPS. My plan was to wait for the fat man to do his roly-poly action, then I just hop onto a pillar and just launch some lightning bolts at him. Right here wasn't really the best example of the strategy, but it's a good example of why the Godskin Duo is just annoying as fuck sometimes, honestly. After getting screwed over, I managed to somehow dodge the Nobo's roll and perch myself up on the pillar in order to rain down an impressive amount of damage. Now, it wasn't much, but it was a start. Truth be told, I have no clue how I didn't die right there, but you're listening to the man that absolutely loves to live dangerously. So dangerously that I swapped out my lamp for a nightlight instead. Let's see how my sleep paralysis demons deal with that. Hone Bolt doesn't really do that much damage from a single cast, but like I said before, it really adds up when you chain the casts together. The downside was that I was about to trigger the Apostle's phase transition, but I don't have to worry about that if I just kill him outright. I was keeping my distance from the Noble and chipping away at his health with some quick-fire lightning spears. I didn't really see a better way to approach this fight at the time, and it's probably boring to watch, but you guys gotta understand, at any given moment, I could have made a mistake that would have left me dead. Clearly, the best way forward was to eliminate the Noble right here. But what did I do instead? Of course, I only did the most logical and reasonable thing. Attack the Apostle and get flattened by tons of fun in his cartwheels. Okay, ain't no way I'm gonna let the Noble disrespect me like that. I'm not letting him— Okay, maybe I will let him do that again, but not without a price, okay? After that, just the Apostle was left, and instead of finishing him off like a normal, sane human, I just wanted to launch some red lightning at him. That didn't really work out, so I just poked him a couple times with the Bolt of Grand Sax, and that was the final blow inflicted onto the Godskin Duo. Definitely not the cleanest fight, you know? Everything after this should be fairly simple, right? Now that you understand that I was wrong, even though I would never admit that, let me show you an actual winning attempt against Maliketh. I know, believe me, I'm starting to question whether or not it actually happened at this point. See, I don't know what it is about this fight. The second phase of Maliketh should technically be the more difficult one, but I still have a hard time understanding how his attacks work in phase 1. I don't understand how I can handle the epilepsy-inducing acrobatics of phase 2, but when he's just slinging rocks at me, my brain just goes like— I was a little irritated by this point because I spent about like an hour and a half trying to beat Maliketh. When he got down to phase 2, I was essentially just in like fuck it we ball mode right here. I got my spacing wrong when I tried to rebuff. I got hammered by Maliketh and his big black— Wait, what? Oh yeah, that's right, that actually wasn't the winning attempt, and I just spent the last 20 minutes of my life editing and writing the script for that attempt, which wasn't even the real one. Nah, fuck it, I'm gonna put it in the video anyway. Honestly, it doesn't even really matter because the very next attempt was the actual winner. Don't worry, I actually checked the recording this time, I promise. Now, the opening to Maliketh's second phase is always the same thing, so I use that as an opportunity to just simply stand a couple feet back and restore my FP. And now I felt like I could actually put some work in, considering I had basically all of my Crimson Flasks left. Yo, if you keep this shit up, I'm gonna take you to the ASPCA, dude. Other than the occasional hiccup, the second phase went fairly smooth. Even though his attacks hit much harder, I feel much more at home because, like I said, I just know how to dodge most of his attacks. He says as he gets hit from 2 separate attacks that he has seen dozens of times and comes within an inch of death. It was fine though, because not long after that, I took care of Maliketh with consecutive uses of my Ash of War, which makes me really wonder if I'm good at this game or if I just get carried by certain elements of my build whenever I make a video. Either way, a win is a win. Sometimes I forget that Gideon is even a boss, honestly. There's really nothing to talk about outside the usual spammy spam magic bullshit that he does, and even then, I don't think it's worth showing. Gideon met his match, met his maker, and he met his daddy. I just so happen to be all 3 of those things. Now, speaking of daddy, Godfrey actually wasn't too bad this time around. I mean, I didn't beat him on the first try or anything like that, but I don't really strive for perfection on this channel anyway, so that's fine with me. Now, I was just treating this whole run as a training session for Godfrey and Malenia, but more on her when we get to her. There were a few times where I absolutely just ate shit and took an axe to the bridge of my nose, but I was concentrating on just going with the flow and just trying to get some dodges in on moves that were giving me trouble. Horaloo always stresses me the hell out, though. I mean, it's hard not to be stressed when the ground is imploding from underneath you and you have a Super Saiyan Santa Claus trying to give you a prostate exam from hell. For a brief moment, I really thought I would get her done on the first try because I had about like an 85% success rate when it came to dodging my opponent's attacks. If you want to know where I got that stat from, I simply made it up. Now, it's a damn shame that this attempt didn't result in a win, but I was at least feeling confident heading into my future endeavors. I couldn't say that in my last couple videos. Now, at some point throughout my attempts, I found out that if I just simply hit Godfrey with fully charged Ashes of War multiple times, I will in fact do stupid amounts of damage to him. In other words, 2 + 2 = 4. I don't know, man, I think this time around I might have just gotten a little bit lucky with the spacing, and that allowed me the opportunities to get Bolt of Grand Sax damage off from range. On the other hand, I know damn well that this is the first attempt where the Horaloo fight actually started to make some sense to me. Overall, I was confident in my dodges, I knew when I'd be able to punish, and how I'd be able to do it with the tools that I have, and deep down, I just knew it was time that I stop acting like a little bitch and just man up. Now, the other thing I realized is that I would rather drag my nutsack across hot coals than try to use the bolt of Grandsacks in melee combat. I've made it known a bunch of times by now, but I can't state it enough. Why would you trade that in instead of acting like Zeus and just slinging lightning at people? I don't get it. Now, I was in the zone towards the back end of the fight. I felt like nothing could stop me, and that's when I got launched 300 feet into the air and subsequently got my back blown out by Godfrey. Pause. Now, I almost choked at the end because somehow this dude dodged my lightning spear right there, but in the end, I had enough clutch factor in me to end this fight after about 15 attempts. Normally, I would consider just fighting Radagon and Elden Beast and then taking on Malenia last, but I wanted to change it up a little bit and fight the only Soulsborne boss in history that does not, in fact, have a soul. Yes, I'm aware that Radagon is also a redhead, but my beef is personal with Malenia. Now, the Reda wasn't really much of a challenge. I mean, there were some scary moments, but they were about as scary as the later Nightmare on Elm Street sequels. I almost got caught lacking, but in the end, it doesn't really take much for me to beat Loretta nowadays, honestly. Now, one thing that I do want to mention is that I was fighting handicapped for the entirety of my Malenia ordeal, okay? Obviously, you don't know what I mean, so I'm just going to show you. Notice that when I'm running down the hallway, my character's kind of like twitching and tweaking a little bit. That's because my controller shat the bed and I was having stick drift for the whole time. So basically, the game kept trying to think that I was trying to move to the right, and I had to fight against that. Even though that was a little bit annoying to deal with, there was something more important that I wanted to accomplish other than just beating Malenia. Surely you should just strive to get through the boss fight and as quickly as possible and as little attempts as possible so you can just reap the rewards that advance in the game. Right? Well, in my opinion, not exactly. Alright, story time, guys. So, now let me give you guys some context as to how my brain operates on a daily basis, okay? I'm the type of person that when I find something I really like doing or experiencing, I try to learn as much as my little monkey brain can conceivably process. Which, granted, isn't really that much, but we can't be perfect at everything. With my love of learning and my tendency to hyperfixate on things, I don't know why I wasn't learning everything about all the Elden Ring bosses. I mean, it's the same reason why I didn't really give up on learning the guitar or, like, music after all these years. So why wasn't I doing that with Elden Ring? I mean, I'm just stubborn, and I want to learn a lot and be good at the things that I enjoy. I mean, I ain't got time to be average or mediocre, man. I want to be a beast. But with bosses like Godfrey and Malenia, I was just trying to rush through them and hope that I got a little bit of luck to help me win the fight. So that's why I mentioned at the start of the video that I was mainly focused on learning the bosses in this run. Now, one of my favorite content creators, Gino Machino, if you've heard of him, I mean, he basically just does no-hit runs of Elden Ring and other FromSoft games, and he is such a beast, man. Go check out his channel if you don't know about him. So basically, one phrase that he always throws out is learn, then win. I mean, it's a simple enough concept, but it basically just describes every FromSoft game. The way that you win the game is by learning your opponent's attack patterns, and then once you become competent at that, or even mastered them, that's when you'll succeed. Now, the point of all that rambling is that this time around, I was focused on actually learning Malenia's moveset and how to dodge her attacks in both phases, which includes the waterfowl dance because at this point I was basically still crossing my fingers and just hoping I didn't die from it. On the flip side, I was also spending a lot of time trying to see when I'd be able to use different incantations or if it was even possible for me to use them. I quickly found out that most of my incantations were damn near useless. But not you, Honebolt. I knew I could rely on you. Oh boy, it's waterfowl time.
Monster kill.
Oh my god, that wasn't even close. Now, on my first round of Malenia attempts, I sat there for about an hour just trying to bait out her attacks and some of the ones that are more troublesome for me to deal with. Up until this point, I think I made it through her full waterfowl combo like 5 times unscathed, and that is across every single playthrough of Elden Ring that I've done, but making through it alive was still a win. After a while, I gathered some pretty valuable information. One thing I noticed is that she couldn't really ever dodge a fully charged Ash of War from the Bolt of Grandsacks. And I don't mean to brag or anything, but I did in fact get a couple perfectly clean dodges against the waterfowl every now and then. I noticed it's really easy to dodge when she starts it far away from you. Malenia is literally so easy. Just stay far away and just attack from a distance. Now, speaking of staying far away, I actually managed to get her down to her second phase once or twice, and this is something that I also wanted to improve in my game. I wanted to test out like some rebuffing sequences for when she's in her Scarlet Aeonia, because after that it's like impossible to buff again. She turns beyond crazy and runs at you more aggressively than your girlfriend when she comes home drunk and horny at 2 AM while she's ovulating. Like, damn baby, I know you can't resist, but that look in your eyes is borderline evil. Oh my god. Like, look at this chick. She's on a mission. She's like the damn Terminator. Ain't nothing stopping her, so good luck trying. And believe me when I say that many tries were needed. Believe it or not, there were a few times where I actually came pretty close, but then my palms started to get sweaty, and I may or may not have choked. It was definitely frustrating and a little demoralizing because my brain just couldn't react in time to use the frost pot, but it is what it is. But nothing could get any worse after my very next attempt. Sometimes things just have to get worse before they get better. You might spend months striking out with women at bars and clubs, but all it takes is one good shot to score. You just have to believe in yourself. Your parents may have raised a chronically online gamer with a vitamin D deficiency, but they didn't raise no bitch. You've just got to learn how to roll the punches sometimes, and believe me, I was rolling. I don't know how many times I had to dodge before I was able to get my next hit in. By this point, I discovered that the Lightning Spear incantation was arguably my best tool in the arsenal other than my Ash of War. Earlier, I told you guys that Malenia couldn't really dodge a fully charged Ash of War. Oddly enough, the opposite was true for the Lightning Spear. She couldn't really dodge the quick cast, and I mean, it was very useful. With some quick thinking, I was able to neutralize her waterfowl with a frost pot, and I knew I was in a great position. Once she did the Scarlet Aeonia, I just literally had to not fuck up. I took a deep breath and slowed down. She was frostbitten, I was struggling with my insecurities. We are not the same. A fully charged Ash of War knocked her on her ass, and the second one laid the finishing touches on what was probably my best ever performance against her. I sat there in disbelief because I couldn't believe I actually beat her by myself for the first time. It felt really good, man. It actually felt like I was getting better at this game. Radagon and Elden Beast, on the other hand, were not going so well. They were actually driving me nuts, and let me explain why. So, each fight started off pretty much the same way. I mean, I had time to use a fully charged Ash of War, and then it just went downhill from there. For the guys that have been around for a little bit, you probably know that Radagon is one of the bosses that, honestly, I have down at this point. For the most part, my dodges were fairly on point. There was a little bit of rust that needed to be shaken off, and a little bit of lag due to the fact that I'm playing on console, but my biggest issue is that my melee attacks just weren't doing enough damage compared to what I was getting out of my incantations. Radagon was making me use up all of my healing flasks. And on the few times I was actually able to make it through to the Elden Beast, my resources were pretty much depleted by then. It was clear that something was going to have to change and that I'd have to make an executive decision. I didn't want to do something like this, but sometimes you just have to accept your failures. The end of this run was recorded after patch 1.09. I am so sorry for doing this. I had zero desire to actually use the lightning armament for like 99% of my playthrough, but thankfully I left it in as a viable incantation. Can you tell that I was losing my mind at this point? I also changed up my talismans to benefit the moveset of the Bloodhound Claws, and I added the Pearl Drake talisman as well. And I noticed a difference straight away, honestly. I didn't really have to play so passively like I did during my dozens of attempts with the Bolt of Grandsax. I like being able to get right up in Radagon's face and give him a good old-fashioned ass-whooping. I know I'm skipping around a little bit here, but I don't think you could name a better duo than me and choking on boss fights. It's just what I do. Even though some of you may consider this run a failure because I copped out of using the Bolt of Grandsax, let me tell you something. I call myself a failure every night before I go to bed anyway, so you literally cannot get under my skin any more than I already do on a nightly basis. Now, the funny thing about the swap to the Bloodhound Claws is that I didn't realize until like 5 attempts in that I had the ability to use the Bloodhound step, and oh my god, does this make this fight a million times easier. I was considering at one point to do a run of only the Bloodhound Claws, but after this fight, I realized that would be way too easy. This weapon really is the complete package for people that want a melee-focused playstyle. The DPS is insane, and the Bloodhound Step Ash of War saved my ass so many times. And honestly, I don't feel bad because I'm sick of Radagon and his Super Saiyan teleportation bullshit. Speaking of which, Goku would destroy Superman in a fight. Debate with a wall. I finally eliminated Crab Rangoon, but my healing flasks were a little depleted. But I'm fine. Mama didn't raise no bitch. However, she may have raised a sensitive, emotional, and slightly awkward boy. I'll tell you what though, boy. These claw things right here, oh my god. Damn, they're fun. I'll tell you what is not fun, though. Every time I have to fight the Elden Beast, I feel like I'm fighting the urge to fall asleep as well as the actual boss. You know that feeling when you're driving home from work or school and your mind just goes into autopilot because you've been doing this thing like 100 times already? The light may be on upstairs, but there is not a soul home. Nothing but some cobwebs, a wrapper from a Big Mac, and a crippling sports betting addiction. In my case, take out the wrapper and replace it with one of these. Oh, hold up, we got a stance break. Oh my god, I don't remember the last time I got one of these in New Game Plus. After that, the Elden Beast released its Elden Stars, but luckily for me, I always have that Crimson World bubble tier on. I keep that motherfucking thing on me. Now that being said, how the hell did I take damage right there? I thought that that bubble tier was supposed to make you immune to non-physical damage. Ouch. I will not lie, I was shitting myself towards the back end of the fight because of my new lack of healing. If I would have died here, I would have given my next door neighbor's kid a run for his money in terms of gamer rage. I think that kid might have something wrong with him. Luckily for everybody involved, no gamer rage was necessary and no holes were going to be put into my wall that day. Bloodhound Step saved my ass once again, and unfortunately, my claws weren't buffed with lightning. But honestly, I didn't give a shit. For my sake and for the video's sake, we can pretend that I had it. Well, everyone, we're at that point in the video again where I offer my thanks and I beg for interaction to appease the YouTube algorithm. But seriously, I'm always grateful for any type of feedback I get, and if you enjoyed what you saw from me today, let me know by leaving a like on the video or a comment just telling me how sultry and soothing my voice is. If you were impressed enough by this video and you're thinking about subscribing, you literally have nothing to lose and everything to gain, so go right ahead. That's all from me for today. I've been Flock of Turtles. You've been amazing. And oh my god, I actually beat Malenia by myself today.